start with.
Yeah. You want to hold it? All right. Thank you. I feel like a rock star now. Okay. So here's a bit of the experience from a user, right? So I very easily got to my web page and I just logged in. In this case, it was my email and password. But like I said earlier, if you want to integrate that with your company, user management, there's no issue there. You can do that and it will authenticate automatically. As I logged in, I get to my home page and you can see that in this case, it's an instance that's already been used, right? So there's examples of different dashboards that are suggested for me. I'm a brand new user. I just created it a second ago, so I don't have any of my own content, but I can go and access the content that other people have made accessible for me. And if I were to open one of these, for example, we can see what this looks like. A typical entry point for a business user is going to be a dashboard, right? So that's kind of a similar experience across most BI tool. But where this starts getting a bit more interesting is, first of all, you can see in the top right corner, it says just now, right? And what that signifies is all the numbers we're looking at right now were just updated from the database, right? When I open my dashboard, we got the new updated numbers for all these things. And as I scroll down, we can have a look at different type of visualization and assembling maybe different data sources, maybe different reports, or all together. I'm scrolling the right way, cool. And you can gather information as you sort of view and select the different data points that are displayed here. And one of the other advantages from this, I guess, direct database connection is when you're exploring and drilling into the data, there is no limitation in terms of the granularity of the data you can look at, right? So even though I'm on my total sales of a year-over-year report, where in October 2017 I made 378,000. From there, if it is relevant, right, and if it's something the user wants to do, you can actually go all the way down to the very granular information as to what were the individual orders that were placed. In this case, we're talking about an e-commerce store, but obviously this will be customized and adapted to whatever data you guys are in need of analyzing. And then from here, you can also continue your journey, where if you were interested in looking at, for example, specific customers or specific brands and drilling into those details, you're able to kind of carry on doing that through the setup of different actions or different links to other places. The difference between those two things, actions are actually ways of using the data. So from here, in this case, I could directly email a customer through integration with a mail server, or through integration with a marketing application, for example, or go to a separate dashboard that have been prepared to now gather all the information about these people. And as I click on those links, it will automatically bring along with it the information, right? So in this case, this person, Christina King, is not very interesting. She only has made one order, but it kind of shows the capability of what can be made available and displayed directly for an easy custom business user experience. If I circle back to my dashboards here. And this will carry on, the same theme sort of carry on through the whole application and through the whole dashboards, right? So if you want to know about each of these points, or if you want to drill into more information about specific, in this case, brands, into subcategories, different hierarchies, etc., all of that is also integrated, as well as different links. So if you are using multiple applications that are based on the web, or just on the internal infrastructure, like your intranet, you can also kind of integrate all of it together, right? And if I want to know more about one category, I can go and again get that information directly from here. This works great for the people that either have someone else create reports for them, or the people that have very standard questions, right? So you have standard questions, you can get those answered here very quickly, you can get access to the detail, and you're quite happy. What we see a lot is that a dashboard is going to serve those people well, but there's always someone that's going to have a new question or a more detailed question, and they want to maybe investigate something, right? There's a spike in here, or there's a detail there that they want to look at. And so to enable those users to actually not just consume things that have already been pre-built for them, there's a second area in Looker, which we call Explore, and this is where everyone is able to actually answer their own questions. And so you can see in the top menu, it's already there. It says Explore. I can go and into it, and they're kind of like different entry points into the data. But you're also able to do that based on any example. So if I wanted to say take this as my source of inspiration, I can bring it along with me into the second interface. And the key, the big difference here is the flexibility in terms of what you can create and what you can see. So on the left side, there is a whole lot more options. Essentially, all the KPIs and metrics and definitions that are coming from the model are available here on the left side. So you can just scroll down, see what is of interest, and add them to your reports. If I, for example, didn't care so much about gender right now, but would rather sort of investigate these changes over time, I can go and select the metrics and the dimensions that make sense. When I click the Run button, is actually when Looker is going to then send that request to you, to your data source, your database, and gather the answer, right? And then so this answer can then be viewed as a table or visualized in the type of graphic that is of interest for you. I could, for example, increase this a little bit, change my filters, look at a bit more data. Yep. Same thing, I can go and grab that. Right, from having access to a database, that really doesn't limit you there. So I'm a user, I had a new question, I was able to go and create this report to answer it, to see how my customers are purchasing from different sources, or they're getting referred through my marketing from different channels, etc. What do I do with this, right? Maybe that was a simple question, I have my answer, I'm happy. I didn't have to ask anyone else to do that. Maybe it's something that actually I want to share with one of my colleagues. You don't even need to save this. You can just grab the link and send that to your colleague through a messaging app or through an email, wherever it is. They can have access directly to that. Yeah?
Okay, and the sharing part is specifically have a very good part about it. So if I send it today to maybe someone here, and they check that 3 days from now, the link will be updated itself. You will not get the old data, you'll get the fresh data, because it's always refreshed from the server, which means your reports are always accurate, it's always on time, it depends on you itself. Sharing now is not just sharing an old report, it's actually sharing the data. If you want to see exactly what happened 3 days ago, you just choose the time spot and it will give you the data itself. So this is a huge flexibility that nobody actually can discover, because we always get the report itself as static, now it's pretty much dynamic.
Yeah, and about the dynamicness, there's another thing that's very important, which is if I send this link to my whole company by accident, right, whoever opens it is automatically restricted to their own data, right? So the security is not in the report itself, it's in the user that opens the report. So if I'm a person that's only allowed to see Facebook, I can open this very same link, and to me, it will only look like this, right? So that's another very different thing about accessing the data directly. There are obviously still a couple of options if you needed to send this in a way that's more static. So you can download the data, as you can see, and you can also just send it directly into to an email, for example, as a PDF or as an image or anything like that. There are a host of other options available for destination, and I'll show you that in the scheduling, because then we can also talk about triggers and monitoring and making sure that if something goes above a threshold or below a threshold, then the emails get sent. The last thing just before I look at that scheduling bit, and then is sort of, we also enable the users to create those customized dashboards, personalized dashboards, right? So from here, if I create something, I can very easily just say, this is what I want to put in my dashboard. Should we switch. Thank you. Thank you for your arm, Mohammed. But if you want to intervene at any point, just... Cool. So let's have a look at two things. I'm gonna go and save this as sort of as its own report, and then from there it will be very easy to create a dashboard or do the scheduling or both. So I'll just start with that. Saving is fairly standard. There's actually one thing that's cool is that we are doing two things. One, all the saving is centralized, so you can, wherever you save it, you can always access it from another place, right? You just come to the website and everything is here. And we also, a little detail, but actually very useful, is that each user have their own place where they can save their own reports, right? If it's something that's only relevant for them. So in this case, we have traffic by sources, for example. I'm just going to go and save that and have another look at it. In this sort of interface, it's going to be still the same, right? So if I open it tomorrow, it's going to be updated. As I was saying to some people earlier, there is some caching that's available. So if you want to control and say your data is only updated once a day, you can cache the result for that day and then clear it whenever the day is over at midnight or whenever the data is refreshed. Which is why it says data is from cache over here for this time round. Whoops. Cool. So I guess from the business unit point of view, the last two things are going to be around scheduling, which we've actually just remade to look very nice. Fortunately, this is the old version, but the capabilities are the same. So you can say, this is my key report before my meeting with my investors. So I need to receive this, on the first day of the quarter or the last day of the quarter every month, and that's going to be very simple. The other piece is around, I was saying, triggers. So whichever KPI you're monitoring, whichever threshold you don't want to go past, you can use those metrics as filters directly in the report. And then you can tell Looker, okay, could you check those metrics for me once a day, once an hour, every 5 minutes, whatever definition you want, right? So in this case, you would do it once a day in the morning. But we can change that to be on weekdays or on weekends, etc. And then only send that to me if suddenly this report is something bad is happening and I'm getting results. So then email it to me. But just only email it to me once. So only email it to me if things are changing, right? So then you're getting the alert to an email. And if you think about what's going to happen, right? So the person's going to get the email. They're going to be like, oh, shoot, what happened? And let's go fix this. So the next step in operationalizing the data is to say, well, instead of me going and fix it, why not just send the data to another application that's going to automate the fix, right? So my customer is doing badly. Let's go and create tasks in Salesforce so the manager can go and act on it. My ads are not doing very well. Let's go and cancel them in Google AdWords, or let's go cancel them in Facebook ads. Let's automatically push my list of users to my marketing app to email them, wherever that is. And you can do that by sort of selecting the endpoint you want to do, and then say, typically you would then send that more like a computer format, like a JSON, etc., rather than an image or an Excel file. But the idea here is the same. And you can also create multiple schedules. So say you're going to create one that's going to go send the data to the machine, fix a problem, but also send a notification to the admin so they didn't know it happened. Yeah.
Okay, just let me ask a generic question. How many of you at their company have more than 100 reports? Show of hands. Okay, over 100. How many have over 500? Okay, perfect. How many you use from the 500 or above?
Maximum 20.
So we have like over 500 and maximum 20. Imagine you receive 500 email, 500 report, and you actually are not using them. So by this way of scheduling, you are actually getting what you want when it happens. So this is a huge discount of time that you will get as a mindset. You will not be flooded with emails, you will not be flooded with reports, but actually you get whenever you need the report itself. Other than this is business as usual, everything is working fine. So you can imagine the shifting in mindset, but just having the reporting this way. It's operationalizing it, you are taking it to the action directly, and you're saving your time.
Cool. So the last thing I wanted to show you, sort of you a bit more of an, I guess, an advanced business user. You want to create your own dashboards. I'll just add a couple of visualization to a dashboard, which is pretty simple. So I can do that either from something that already exists. In this case, this report already exists, so I can just go and add it to a dashboard. I'll just have to actually create a new dashboard because you can see I don't have one yet. So this is my say business overview, so my summary dashboard where I would start my day or start my week. Okay, I can add it, save it to the dashboard, and that's kind of done, right? I just get a confirmation message that confirms that it's been added, and if I click on that link, I can go and have a look at it. Right now it's going to be very simple, right? It's just going to be the one visualization on this page, but by clicking the edit button, I can go and zoom in by accident again. I can go and resize and move things around. And I can also go and define new tiles, right? So if I had another report in mind, it's the same concept of exploration. Select what I want to do my reports on and say, oh, I just want to see how many orders have been made, right? Or what's their status is. So let's maybe say status and number of orders. And the mouse, sorry, I'm really struggling with this mouse. Okay, cool. When I run, it's going to check that I'm getting the results that I want. I can, again, in the same way, select the visualization. And then when I click save, it's going to directly add it to my site. I forgot to give it a title. I can just go back and edit that and give it a title. So quite simply, I'm able to create all the elements I need, put them on a dashboard with the assurance that the metric definition and the number I'm getting are actually consistent across all the other dashboards, right? It doesn't matter if I'm looking at a dashboard I created, someone else created, I'm getting an email about it. All of that's always going to be coming through the modeling layer, which means that the definitions are consistent. The next bit I do want to show you is actually where it's getting a bit more technical, which is the modeling layer, which is base of SQL and how you connect to the database, etc. So before I do that, maybe if anybody has one or two questions on the user interface, I'm happy to answer that before moving on.
Hi, good morning. I have a quick question. In the intro video, you guys were talking about predictivity. Where can we see that?
I'm not sure if the video was showing that. So productivity would be something that is defined in the model and how you want to calculate it essentially. You are able to see sort of trends and like simple linear regressions of what the trends are. And that's something that would be done in as you create the report, for example. Again, more complex definitions would be in the model. But if I want to see my sales, I don't know, by month, what my average is, it's going to be very flat. Let me see, yeah. Average sale price, total sale price, whatever that is. When you are actually defining the visualization, there are a host of options that I didn't show you on the right side to define how you want to look at it. So changing like the type, the colors, displaying values, all that sort of things. And one of these things on the y-axis might be to add some reference lines and some trend lines.
there any data mining in Looker?
No. So that's not something. So we're, always going to be generating SQL. We're not a data mining tool. I mean, to put it simply.
Those data mining engines like the Oracle data miner or the SQL base, which uses SQL as the end result you're getting with. Those data mining helps you to build the structure of the query you're looking for, or like the type of information that it comes to data mining and the big data when it comes to having.
Yeah, so you're seeing the model, basically an analyst is defining the model. There is assumption that they understand and know what the data is, right? If you end up with a data set where you don't actually know what the data is and you don't know what you want to do with it, that's a separate tool. It's not something that Looker is made for.
There's a lot of functionality coming out in databases to do actual predictive modeling at the database level. So if you had that type of scenario, then maybe the databases you were just referencing actually have that functionality. You could surface that within Looker. But in terms of actually doing the predictive modeling piece of it, a lot of what our data scientists will do is pull it out in R, model out the predictive, and actually pipe that back into the database, and then they surface that up in Looker. So that's one way that you can do it.
What's available today, like looking at past data information and then predicting future behavior, for example.
Yes, what you would want to do is actually take whatever has been generated in Looker, pull that into R or Python, which is, both of those are pretty common in terms of the predictive analytics space. And your data scientists could model that out using the information that's coming from Looker. And then they can actually pipe that information back to the database and surface it within Looker. One of the interesting things about the tool, and Seb may have glossed over it, but as he was building out that first report and he was saying, oh, I don't want it male or female, I want it by orders, I want to adjust it by, instead of 10 days for filtering, I want it for 30 days. All of those things are areas in which a business user would have to keep going back to that data scientist or that data analyst and be like, oh, oops, sorry, I don't want this for 10 days, I want it for 30 days, and then wait for a couple days, get that report back, and then you're like, oh, I don't want this visualization, I want that one. So this just makes it very iterative for a business user to find what they need. And what that does actually is it opens up the data analyst or the data scientist time for predictive, for things that are a lot more technical and a lot more difficult to do, so that your business users are kind of servicing themselves for the majority of what they need, and then your very technical, expensive people can spend their time on more interesting tasks. Does that make sense? He has a question.
Regarding that point, some techniques in the data science needed to be like hard-coded, like neural networks or support vector machines. So how can I import my code and at this tool? I think that what can be imported? I don't import my code. So
No.
the only models that could be used is the rule-based models. Like if I'm generating rules, so these rules can be implemented by SQL codes and then be published at Looker.
Yeah, yeah. The idea is the model in this case is a data model. It's not a predictive model or a machine learning model. It's about accessing data in a consistent way, and then reporting on it or using it somewhere else. And in your case, for the predictive model, you want to use it somewhere else. So what Looker is like.
And then the results out from the model, then back here to visualize.
Correct. For the non-technical people. Yeah. So when Megan there was saying about saving time for the data scientist, it's because now like this report here looks very simple, but actually getting there is not, right? So if I look at what's being actually generated and how we're getting the information from the database, like Looker is writing and using all this descriptor of SQL, which normally, obviously, an end user would never do, right? So normally, if you want to get that report, you have to go and ask a specialized person to be able to assemble this, to be able to just get the data, to then be able to visualize it in the graph, etc. Right? So me clicking on the interface to say I don't want the gender and I want the date instead is a very simple way of doing something that's really hard. And kind of upskilling the business user without them even knowing. Cool. So this is where it gets really boring or more interesting depending on who you are. If you are, working and exploring in Looker and like using the simple interface to select the elements that are generating the SQL, what happens is as you are selecting the elements, it's actually like in real time generating the relevant queries, the relevant information. If you are filtering something, it's going to add it in different places. If you're selecting fields from different tables, it's going to do joins, and it's going to calculate all the different metrics based on where it is that you want to do. Now, I didn't select it. That is transparent for the user, but it's also all based on that model. So when I'm looking at my gross margin, or I'm looking at my return count, or I'm looking at a churn customer, or activities, etc., all of that is defined in the model. So let's have a look at that model. The way Looker approaches this, and one of the things is, like we've been saying over and over again, we connect to a SQL database. So the model is based off SQL. It is an abstraction of SQL, and it's code-based. So I'll do a couple of things. I can open one example, and we can also go and take some of these metrics and see how they're calculated. Yes. So what happens in practice? And if it's of interest, I can show you from zero, from scratch after as well, but I just thought I'd give you an example that's already kind of bit populated. You can look at your database. You can select the tables you want to work with, and will then automatically generate a definition for those tables. And so as a starting point, what you end up with is you can see on the left side here, there's a file for each of the tables. And within that file, quite simply, we'll give you a dimension for each of the columns. And those are your basic building blocks, right? We're just saving you work, saving you the typing. Where this is interesting is that each of these elements is a unique definition that you can then reuse and you can refer to it, right? So if you have complex calculation that are using these elements, you can just refer to that, and then that new calculation is also something you can refer to in another more and more complex calculation. So they're essentially building blocks you can assemble like Legos in whichever way you want. And you can do that within a table, across tables, or even other things I'll show you in a second. So if I look at a simple example here that I like to start on is talking about, there's two columns in my data, one's called first name, one's called last name. One of the developer has tweaked it just to sort of capitalize it, and so we're using directly SQL functions to do that. So whatever you're able to do directly in the database with SQL, you can use all of that directly in Looker. You're not losing any functionality. And we're doing that for first name and last name. And then actually, my business users don't care about those things separately. They only want to look at the name, the full name of a person. And so these things have been hidden away from them, right? Make their life easier, don't add fields that they don't need. And it's been replaced by this brand new dimension called name, where we are using this purple notation to actually refer to that definition, right? And then concatenating using SQL with the last name. And these are the elements that this one is not hidden, so it'll be available. And if I go back to my to these definitions over here, let's remove this couple of things. Let's have a look at my name. It's over here. I can go and grab it, right? I can go and see how much money they spent. I'll run it and show you the SQL generated. Looker is then taking that information and assembling the query, right? So in this simple example, we got the init cap of the first name concatenating with the init cap of the last name. So we're kind of taking instructions from the model to know how to generate, calculate the things in a repeatable manner, right? And I can combine username with my sale price, can combine it with my number of return count, I can combine it with whichever other metrics or whichever other dimension as well.
So this is the part where we were talking about earlier when people, I think there were a couple of questions around ETL and how heavy you have to actually do that sort of work to move the data into your database and then surface it within Looker. So what Seb is actually demonstrating is how you can transform the data within our platform, how you can hide fields that users may not need, but then you can still connect to the full database and have all of the information available if you need it. So let's say at some given time you as a user want a field unhidden. That's really easy for a data analyst to go in and provide that for you. It takes a couple clicks, and that's really it. So this is really powerful in terms of the transformations in which you can do within the platform itself. Typically, and this is something I'm learning because I'm not very technical either, but typically a lot of these transformations would actually have to go back down to the database level. And then if you're using a tool that extracts your data into a server, you'd have to go back down to the database, change the data there, extract it into a server somewhere, and then visualize it in something like a Tableau or a Click. That process could take a couple days, whereas if you're not doing that extract, it can be seamless and immediate. Does that make sense to everyone? I want to make sure we're not losing people. 'Cause how many people in here know SQL or are technical folks? Oh, quite a few. Okay, cool. For the rest of you, I'm sorry. Seb, go ahead.
Cool. And so, I guess to go back to the value proposition here, is another example. Taking the sale price and wanting to calculate my gross margin, using information from separate tables. And then this new gross margin calculation itself can be reused to calculate it by item or to make my total and average, etc., etc. The principle is the same as before. And I think what's really powerful is that in the case when there are changes and a user wants something new, or a user, the business is changing and they want to calculate things, if my gross margin definition changes, I only have one line to modify. And that's automatically going to now update every other metric that references it. And it's also going to go and automatically update any report or dashboard or email that people are receiving the very next time they open it.
So Seb, how would you do that in other tools?
Quite often, that was the example where the delivery, the problem that they were experiencing, where those metrics are typically defined within the dashboard. And so if you change it in one place, you have to go and repeat yourself in the other places.
And earlier when we were asking people how many reports or dashboards they had, they said what, 100, 500, something?
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Does anyone have any questions on that before we move on? Can pass the mic around. No? Okay.
Seth, you talked a little bit about, so if you go to the field picker on the dashboard. So you'll see on the left-hand side here we've got, thank you. You'll see on the left-hand, sorry. You'll see on the left-hand side we've got dimensions and measures, and we've also got some in orange. What's the significance of those, Seb?
Yeah, so everything that's in orange are all the KPIs, the calculations and definition that you're using in your reports, right? So whenever you see most of the report I created, I was using all of that, and it's just a simple way of kind of differentiating what things that people want to report on and what are the metrics that they want to calculate. And what this does by them being there is really kind of ensures that everyone is using the same ones, the same definitions.
And if I was using a workbook product like Tableau or Power BI, and the business user, what process do I have to go through to make those calculations in those tools? How does this make it easier for me as a business user?
Yeah, I think the ease there is sort of the way that it's already been provided as a calculation that exists, right? In a lot of workbook BI tool, it's actually something that the user would have to define in the dashboard itself, which is fine if all you're doing is a sum, right? But very often, like what these things actually do, like my gross margin and my shipping time, it's actually combining multiple fields into these complex calculations, right? It's not just a sum of my sales. That's a simple example, right? My shipping time is taking my arrival time minus my delivery time, and then in some cases it's taking other options. So it's a complex calculation made of multiple moving pieces, and that's available just at a click directly here for everyone.
And I think the key takeaway from that is I've asked that question specifically because I was working with a client recently who was looking to use Looker for self-service, and one of the questions was, how can my business users ask this question? And the question that they were asking was actually very complex. And so what you're seeing here is the model actually combining those metrics for the business user to be able to ask that question in that format. The big win for that particular customer, which was actually a company in Australia, was that Looker is creating that environment and putting those complex queries together. So if Seb clicks into one of the orange, if you click into one of those orange calculated fields, which we have seen this, but it's worth specifying it, and you go to the data tab, Seb.
I'll grab a couple, just because my mouse is going crazy.
Okay, so that is effectively the SQL query that a business user would be expected to write in order to receive that query. Now, that isn't really going to happen for two reasons. One, the average business user probably doesn't have, not all, but the vast majority probably don't have the SQL skills to actually create that. And secondly, the time as well it takes to actually rebuild that. It's also worth mentioning that Seba showed you a few dashboards. He also asked a question about how many people have got over 100 or 200 or 300 dashboards in an organisation. The problem then is actually updating those dashboards. So if you're looking to update those dashboards in a traditional, should we say, tool, then the rewriting of that code is a particular pain. Looker integrates with, I don't know how many are familiar with GitHub or Bitbucket. Probably some of the more technical people are familiar with that. But Looker allows you to integrate with that and then actually publish, make the changes in the tool and then publish those changes out to the business users. Seb, do you want to just show that? And this, the key takeaway from that, while Seb just gets this ready, is that that's a huge time saver. So if you're rebuilding, you're asking for, if your users are asking for changes in the dashboard and you're having to rewrite the code, bad news, really. Especially if you've got 500, 1,000 users, that's really bad news. If you can do that in one area, publish that, actually commit the changes once you're happy, that's a huge value add.
Yeah, so what we provide to developers is actually this development mode, where that's what you have to do to be able to modify anything, right? Which is taking a second, but we'll get there. But essentially what it does is, for people who are familiar with Git, is that it's going to put you in your own Git branch, and all the changes you're making are actually only affecting yourself until you've been able to test them and you're happy with it, so you're not interrupting business as usual. Production is still working as normal, but as soon as you're happy with the changes, you can just go and commit or open a pull request, depending on how secure you want this to be and reviewed. Cool. All right, so that's going to be the end of the demo. Secure, and we're able to review the code before it's pushed and before it's made available. But as soon as the code has been pushed, it's going to be affecting everyone, and the new definitions are going to be shared across everybody.
Another thing that's quite important to point out is again, if those of you who've had experience with BI tools before, and I've actually had a couple of questions on this morning already, is about the post-sale support. Not necessarily from a salesperson, because you probably don't want that. It's more product support and how you can, you're supported the use of the product. So something that's very different in Looker is that we have built into the product live chat support. It's not a bot either, it's a live person. And typically we have 20 hours coverage across the globe with that. Now the way support tends to work with some of the other VI tools that are available is usually an 8-hour turnaround time that is there's an email response that's pointed at a repository. If you want premium support, you'll be paying somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000 for that premium support. With Looker, we have an inbuilt chat function, which Seb will demonstrate.
I think they're not awake yet.
Okay, well, it appears to be offline, but the key takeaway there is we have a chat function that is typically a 30-second response time with a live person.
Yeah, we're covering this from Dublin and from California, so it doesn't cover the 24-hour clock, but like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And through our alliance, we are expanding the time zones. So hopefully within the coming couple of, let's say, duration, that we will have a full coverage across the globe, and this is the right thing to do. So whenever you have any issues, whenever you have it as a technically or as a business user, you will go to the help, go to the chat, and people will help you with that information. So I think this is very sweet, because seriously, you will get what you want in literally less than minutes.
Cool. So if you guys have any questions, I think this would be a good time. I'm also available if you want some one-on-one further details. And
I have a couple of announcements. Can I do that?
Yeah, of course. I was going to say thank you.
First of all, with your card that you get from today, you just show it out of the parking, you get a 50% discount on the parking. So this is a good thing. One more thing, just to show here, during the coming period, please send us on Pegasus, info@pegasus-oe.com. If you have any requests, or if you want to have a specific demo tailored for your company with disregard to whatever department, whatever function you are looking forward to, and we will do that gladly. During the period that we are making this event with, which is the whole May, we are offering very good competitive prices for specifically EMEA region. So this is a huge benefit, that you are getting probably the whole 9 yards of Looker, but with a very special price. And actually before that, you are going to try it, and we help you with our team of data scientists and technical team and commercial team before you start even your data analytics using. So you will test it, you will see it, you will feel it with your own data. You do your calculation for ROI. Definitely we can help you with that, but you will get the feel with your numbers, KPIs, and so on. Once you get that, once we agree with that, we can start contracting with each other. Other than this, it's all testing, and it's free on us with the compliments of Looker and Pegasus. So keep this in mind, because I think you need to feel it with your numbers. It will give you a great sense of what you are going to accomplish with it, and we'll take it from there. Let's start questions if you have.
Thank you.